Okay, thank you very much. For this, as usual by the Commission, we have prepared a little presentation, which I will share, maybe to give you the, how can I put this, where we come from, why Europe has decided to tackle housing for the past year and a half. So where do we come from? I'm a member of the Housing Task Force, which is a kind of a cross-DG unit which has been specifically created to draft, propose, and implement what we call the European Affordable Housing Plan. I will come to it just after. Maybe just to give you some elements of context. What we have here is the 2025 extract of the Eurobarometer, which is kind of an EU-wide survey to EU citizens, asking them what is your most pressing issue. In cities, more than 50% of people responded lack of affordable housing. In towns and suburbs, in rural areas as well, not 50%, but still a very high pressing issue. So this is EU-wide and has a lot been addressed during the European elections, has risen a lot everywhere that there was a campaign. Some indicators, just to give you some elements. For the past 13 years, what we have seen is a 60% increase in house price in nominal terms, yes, but still much faster than household income. More than 20% average rents have increased, with new rents, of course, increasing significantly more. Very significant decrease of residential building permits as well, especially since 2021. We estimate all types of situation, including that the 20% of the existing stock is not used to its full potential. So it includes the vacant because not decent enough, vacant because not energy performant enough, vacant because secondary homes, many types of situations. But around this, we estimate that in the EU, 20% of the existing stock is not used to its full potential. And a very sad number, we estimate that around 1 million of people are homeless in the EU. So that's for the big picture. Other data to give you a sense of the situation across the EU. I really like this map. It shows you basically that how much square meter you can rent using 1/3 of your disposable income. So for instance, if I take the set of Portugal, you can rent around 30 square meters with 1/3 of your disposable income maximum. So the darker the picture, the grimmer the situation. We see, of course, on the coastlines, affordability issues, in the metropolitan areas, affordability issues, but also in Eastern Europe, which is basically one of the areas where the situation is most acute. Also, another policy areas which has a lot been raised during the consultation of housing and by different stakeholders, including the European Parliament, the matter of short-term rentals, Airbnb between us. So the idea is to understand here the density of short-term rental per square meter, the density of basically how much square meter is being used as the short-term rental in Europe. And of course, it follows the most touristic areas of the coastline, the metropolitan areas as well. I will come back to this because it will be one of the actions of the housing plan. Of course, you see this kind of symptomatic issues. What we have established with colleagues in the European Commission is another, you would say, but here a good estimate of what we think is the housing gap based on demographic changes, based on economic drivers at local level. So it's really a work which is not done just at EU level with averages, because of course housing dynamics must be tackled at local level. We estimate that today we build around 1.6 million new units per year. We estimate that we will need 650,000 additional units per year in the next 10 years. This includes new build and renovation to increase the supply, And we estimate that this will cost around an additional 150 billion euros per year, public and private investments unfunded. So that's the picture. We spent the whole year of 2025 with the Housing Task Force doing lots of consultation, working with the European Parliament, working with the European Council as well, and the Council of the European Union to come up with a package. The package is the European Affordable Housing Plan, which was released in December 2025, which is part of other actions, such as the revised stated rules on housing. I will come to this as well for colleagues which are not from the European Union, as to what are stated rules and what is the Commission role on this, the European Strategy for Housing Construction, and the new European boroughs. The European Affordable Housing Plan. 4 pillars. First, boosting housing supply, mobilizing investment, enabling immediate support while driving reforms, and of course, protect the most affected. What do we want to do when we say boosting housing supply? We want to tackle the lack of productivity and innovation in the construction sector. This will be part of the DigiGro construction strategy. And we relate also to skills, digitalization and permitting, for instance. We want to tackle red tape and accelerate housing supply. I will come to it right after. But we want to keep articulating affordability, sustainability, and equality in housing. This is the new European boroughs. Very important initiative from our president, which has already been ongoing for the past years, and which I'm sure the colleagues closer to Brussels are well aware of. Housing simplification package, cutting red tape. The idea is, as part of other simplification packages with the common mandate, is to undertake a comprehensive mapping of relevant EU law and understand better the impact on housing supply and affordability. This relates to any kind of EU legislation. It's not only sectoral legislation like the Water Directive or environmental law. This also relates to financial regulation. So on this, I will look up as to potential input you could give to us. This also relates to support to member states in the effective implementation of EU rules, including simplification opportunities, such as the proposal that we're launching on spinning up environmental assessment. And of course, sharing best practices, housing being multi-level and best taken at local level. So of course, the European Commission cannot dictate from Brussels what should be done. We are, so for this, we will launch a call for evidence, kind of a first paper, which our initial thoughts, late spring and the summer, on which you are very much invited to provide your input on the kind of hurdles you have identified in the EU legislation, including in financial, which could help us increase housing supply. So as I said, focus on housing supply. We have already done some stakeholders meeting. We'll continue to do so. And the idea is really to have this kind of cross-sector consultation. This is centralized by the Housing Task Force, of course, in close coordination with the other policy DGs on which we are used to work with. So that's for the supply side, mobilizing investment. Mobilizing additional public and private investment, revising stated rules to facilitate funding of social and affordable housing. Stated rules. So just so the people not so close to EU affairs could understand, the European Union, there is a fundamental principle which is a competition policy in the EU, which has two main legs, we would say. The first one is what can a state do to aid and economic activities via grants, via tax exemptions, for instance. And the other leg is more related to competition between enterprises. Housing historically has been supported by state via income benefits, the construction of social housing. The revision has for goal to, I would say, give more flexibility to member states as to what they can do and who they can tackle. Not only, as was the case before last year, very low-income household, but now middle-income household who, we've seen it in cities, have lots of difficulties to find affordable housing, essential workers, if you know. So we hope this will give more tools to member states, more flexibility. This will also simplify the way that's been currently been done to really let them help their citizens. The other aspect is on mobilizing additional public and private investment. So for this, we will create the Pan-European Investment Platform for Social and Affordable Housing, together with the key public housing financiers. You have the usual partners of the European Commission, such as the European Investment Bank, which has already launched its housing plan. You have the Council of Europe Development Bank. You have also what we call the national promotion institutions and banks. So institutions which have historically been long-standing financiers of housing. I take, for instance, Caisse des Dépôts et Consignations in France, which basically, I think, spends around 23 billion euros of loans toward housing every year. So we have very strong actors, which together have estimated they could mobilize up to 375 billion euros for affordable housing towards 2029. So we're very much grateful for the mobilization of those actors who can really help us go from Brussels to the to direct proximity to the project promoters. So that works, and with those, we'll create a sphere of a community of investors working on devising new housing funding models. And for this, we'll launch a call for experts in the coming weeks, on which any organization with expertise on housing finance will be much welcome to contribute. So, of course, we'll be very happy to have your input. And also working on the next MFF, of course, and to see what is possible with EU funding. So far, the European Union, we have estimated, has mobilized around 43 billion euros of investment towards housing in the current programmation, so from 2021 to 2027. We need to see how we can do more, what we can do to leverage more with this money, because of course public resources, be they national or European, are quite limited, of course, especially when consider the investment need. Enabling immediate support while driving reforms. Addressing short-term rentals in areas under housing stress. This will be part of a proposal for a regulation, which will be published before, in the coming months, we can say, as to how we can provide, I would say, legal certainty to cities when they want to regulate short-term rentals. So this has been part also of different types of consultations, called for evidence, stakeholder meetings. So we're currently in the process of finishing the whole legislative package around this. So to be seen in the coming months. Speculation in the housing market. So the very sensitive issue, which has been very often addressed by stakeholders and by the European Parliament, is their speculation in the housing market. Said in other words, does financialization have an intrinsic impact on the increase in house price beyond the classic mismatch of supply and demand? Difficult to say for now. Data is lacking. Transparency on real estate transactions is very difficult to aggregate at EU level. So we are working on a study this year to provide some, I would say, conceptual and analytical clarity on the topic. This to be due by the end of the year. Driving forward member state structural reforms. This relates more to, I would say, best practices and also the European semester. Again, something very usual for the European Commission is the every year, as part of the economic coordination between members of the Eurozone, we provide a report specific to every country on social and economic reforms, if I say it very shortly. For the first time, a dedicated annex on housing will be published, on which we will address every kind of matters related to housing, be it market development, also regulation, governance, tenants, owners' rights. And on this part, we really believe this can help to find conversions and promote, the evidence-based practice. Protecting the most affected, housing for young people. How can we devise schemes specific for student housing? For instance, via grants, but also via potential guarantee for tenants on their deposits. We're working on the European Investment Fund on this, and homelessness, addressing homelessness and support households and tenants in vulnerable situation. Today was the release of the European anti-poverty strategy. So really trying to how to say, to work with philanthropic organizations to improve our culture on the topic, to really devise schemes that could also serve them very much, because of course the European housing crisis is affecting everybody everywhere, but they are clearly the most affected so far. So we cannot dismiss the most affected from of our plan and approach with a too much systemic way, I would say. New ways of working together. I mentioned the Pan-European Investment Platform. The Housing Alliance will be kind of an alliance of all stakeholders from cities, member states, associations, workers, to devise scheme on what is not funding schemes, basically. So again, the issue must be tackled at every level, and the European Commission, first added value is to give dynamic and momentum to the issue, and engage all types of members of society to work together on new solutions. And housing summit, institutional momentum as well. The trick with every plan is basically that you release the plan and then you lose momentum because every priorities chase another one. So the idea now is for the Commission to keep the momentum around housing. We will organize, probably after summer, a housing summit at heads of state level, together with the European Council, as well, to continue to generate momentum around the issue of housing, and as to what member states can do to help the European Commission acting to solve this historic crisis. I think this is all. I would advise you to follow up all the development around this plan on the dedicated website, housing.ec.europe.eu, while you will, of course, see all the calls for proposals, all the calls for expression of interest to different initiatives we are planning to launch. I hope that I wasn't too long, and I'm happy to answer any question you might have.